A slap in a church, or a spark, igniting revenge? When two racist cops beat a quiet black man in the middle of a crowded community meeting in Chicago, they thought it was just another routine power trip. What they didn't know, he wasn't a bystander. He was Henry "Hank" Jackson, a man carrying memories of injustice and the strength of resilience. And just 4 minutes later, everything they'd built started to crumble. This is a story of arrogance, injustice, and a kind of justice that doesn't whisper, it roars. Stick around, because this twist, you won't believe until you see it. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Bronzeville, Chicago, always feels like a city at war with itself. Red brick streets, leafless trees, and distant car horns mask the deep racial tension beneath. The sun was just peeking over the horizon as Hank Jackson stepped into St. Mark's Church in Bronzeville. At 68, he carried a quiet authority that needed no introduction. His gray-streaked hair was neatly pulled back under a cap, and his sharp brown eyes missed nothing, not even the sneers people thought he didn't notice. St. Mark's Church, with its weathered steeple and stained glass windows, had seen decades of hope and despair. Hank had walked its wooden aisles for over 30 years, first as a civil rights marcher, then as a father fighting for justice for his son, Marcus, shot dead by police, with no one held accountable. Now he was an ordinary man, but in this community, he was a symbol of endurance. Some still weren't used to him never backing down. As he crossed the threshold, a few nodded at him. One even smiled. Hank gave a slight nod back, his mind already on today's meeting, a discussion about the police arrest of Jamal, a 16-year-old caught spray painting graffiti. He didn't expect more than a typical debate, police harassment, community pushback, but his gut, honed over decades, twitched. Something was off. Reverend Paul Harris, leading the meeting, met him near the door with a strained smile. "Hey Hank," he said, "Officer Carter's already inside." Hank paused. "Carter?" "Yeah," Reverend replied. "Officer Roy Carter, the one who nabbed Jamal. He's real aggressive." Hank gripped his cane tighter. He knew Carter, everyone in Bronzeville did. A guy in his 40s, short-cropped hair, third-generation cop, a legacy of unchecked power. Carter always wore a smug grin like it was standard gear, and he had enough connections in the force to dodge any trouble. Complaints about him, harassment, violence, misconduct, always got swept under the rug like dust. Hank had heard his name in the neighborhood's tales of arrogance. He stepped into the hall quietly, blending in, standing among a crowd of about 30, some young folks, a few women, and 2 other officers at the back. Carter was already there, standing in the aisle, arms crossed, face sour. Jamal sat beside Reverend Harris, eyes wide, uneasy. Carter didn't glance at Hank as he walked in. Instead, he barked at Reverend. "Let's get this going. I don't have all day. I suggest you make time," Hank said, voice steady, stepping closer. Carter spun around, eyeing him, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He was sizing Hank up. Who was this guy? A passerby? Jamal's defender? Hank didn't stand out. No uniform, so to Carter, he didn't matter. "Who are you?" he asked, voice smug. Hank didn't answer. He walked to Reverend's table, glancing at papers, like he hadn't heard. The hall was nearly still, just a few young guys, a group of women, and the 2 officers at the back. Carter, now ticked off, stepped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you." And then it happened. A sharp slap rang out, slicing the quiet like a knife. The crowd gasped, some jaws dropping in shock. Papers stopped rustling. Someone nearly dropped a water cup. The fluorescent lights seemed to flicker in rhythm. Hank didn't budge. His cheek reddened, but he didn't touch it, didn't flinch. He slowly turned his head, locking eyes with the man who'd hit him. Carter stepped back, a bit startled by his own action, but not ashamed. "Not even close," he said, lips curling in contempt. "You people need to learn respect," he muttered. "Oh my God," a voice whispered from the back. "Is he okay?" another asked. But Hank didn't break eye contact with Carter. The officer straightened, oblivious to the trap he'd just sprung. "I don't care who you think you are," You don't butt into my business like. Hank took a step forward, then another. The air grew heavy, like a rope tightening. Reverend whispered, "He's not scared." But Carter didn't hear. He didn't see the horror spreading across faces. And then Hank spoke, voice calm, cold, carrying the weight of decades of injustice. "This how you treat people, officer?" Someone at the back paled. Carter blinked. "You just opened Pandora's box. And judgment's begun." Roy Carter's slap still echoed in the stifling air of St. Mark's Church, like a small explosion, waking the room. Henry Hank Jackson stood there, left cheek red, but his eyes didn't waver. The crowd was still reeling. Some jumped up, others whispered in shock, but no one dared speak yet. Officer Carter, smug grin still lingering, turned to Reverend Paul Harris, like he'd just done something routine. "We done here?" he asked, voice icy. "I've got work to do." Hank slowly straightened, hand tight on his cane, breathing steady, despite the sting on his face. He didn't touch his cheek, didn't show weakness. That slap wasn't just a hit. It was an insult aimed at everyone in the room. At Jamal, at Marcus, at the years he'd believed justice might exist. He stared straight at Carter, voice low but sharp as a blade. "You think you can hit someone and walk away like it's nothing?" Carter turned back, blue eyes flashing contempt. "What do you want? An apology? Keep dreaming." He stepped closer, jabbing a finger at Hank. "You stuck your nose in my business, old man. I don't need to know who you are. But here, I call the shots." The crowd started murmuring, a few bastard calls rising from the back. Jamal, still held by the other officer, shouted, "Let me go. He didn't do anything wrong." But Carter ignored it, zeroed in on Hank. "I didn't butt in," Hank said, voice still calm but heavy with undeniable weight. "I asked you a simple question. This how you treat people, yes or no?" Carter opened his mouth, then shut it, tongue flicking his lips like he was fishing for a comeback. "You looking for trouble?" he growled. "I'm not starting trouble," Hank said, taking a step forward. "I'm saying what I see. You hit me, in front of everyone here. You think that's right?" Carter squared up, trying to reclaim control. "You don't know what you're talking about. I don't have time for this sanctimonious crap." He turned to Reverend Harris. "End this pointless meeting, or I'll arrest the whole lot." But Hank didn't stop. He took another step, eyes locked on Carter. "You can't answer, can you?" he said, voice chilling. "Because you know you're wrong, but you think no one'll touch you." The air in the church felt thick, like a rope pulled taut. Reverend Harris whispered to someone nearby, "He's not scared." Carter didn't catch it, but he felt the shift. The crowd wasn't silent anymore. Some had pulled out phones, murmuring to each other. Maya Evans, Hank's niece, stood near the door, hands shaky but clutching her phone to record. She whispered to a woman beside her, "I've gotta post this. People need to see it." Carter turned back, eyeing Hank again, like he wanted to swing once more, but he held back, just sneered. "Wanna play hero? Go ahead, but don't cry when the consequences hit." He spun around, signaled the other officer to drag Jamal out. "Let's go," he said, voice triumphant, but before reaching the door, he glanced back at Hank. "Learn your place, old man. This is Chicago, not your playground." Hank didn't reply. Carter left, leaving a hall buzzing with anger and chaos. Reverend Harris rushed to Hank's side, hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" he asked, voice worried. Hank nodded slightly, but his eyes stayed on the door, where Carter had disappeared. "I'm fine," he said, voice low, "but this isn't over." Maya ran up, phone still in hand. "I got it all, Uncle Hank," she said, breathing fast. "I'm posting it right now. That guy's not getting away." Hank looked at her, then at the stirred-up crowd around him. "Do it," he said, voice firm. "Let people see who he is." Just 4 minutes after the slap, Maya's video hit social media. The clip of Roy Carter slapping Hank in St. Mark's Church spread like wildfire on dry grass. Bronzeville folks started sharing, commenting, raging. "Cops at it again." One wrote, "That old man didn't do anything wrong." Another added. The video quickly jumped beyond the neighborhood, hitting Chicago activist groups, then local news pages. Headlines popped up. Chicago cop slaps elderly man at community meeting. What's happening in Bronzeville? Meanwhile, at the church, Hank sat on a pew, rubbing his cheek lightly. Reverend Harris stood beside him, shaking his head. I can't believe he did that, he said. He thinks no one can touch him. Hank looked up, eyes sharp. He's wrong, he replied. He doesn't know he just hit the wrong man. Maya sat next to him, her phone's glow lighting her tense face. Uncle Hank, the video's taking off, she said, half excited, half nervous. Over 100 views in the first few minutes. People are sharing it everywhere. They're pissed. Hank nodded, his gaze drifting to the window, where sunlight spilled onto Chicago's unusually quiet streets. He didn't smile. He knew that slap wasn't just at him, but the final blow in a long chain of injustices this community had swallowed for years. Good, he said softly. Let them see. Let them hear. At the same time, in a patrol car parked not far off, Roy Carter chuckled, tossing a dismissive glance at his partner. That old man thinks he's somebody. It's just a dumb video. It'll blow over. He didn't know that. Right then, the spark he'd lit was spreading, burning down walls he thought were untouchable. Maya stepped onto the porch, her phone lighting up again. With a flood of new notifications, she hurried toward him. Uncle Hank, she called, her voice urgent but hopeful. The video's hit thousands of views now. People are demanding justice. And I just talked to Lisa Grant. Hank turned. The civil rights lawyer. Maya nodded. She says we've got a real shot. Not just Carter. The whole Chicago Police Department. She's on her way. Hank took a deep breath. The midday breeze swept across the porch, cool but carrying the warmth of something shifting. Then let's get started, he said, his eyes glinting with the fire of a man with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Lisa Grant arrived less than an hour later, a young woman with curly hair and sharp eyes. She wore a simple black coat, carrying a thick stack of files. Mr. Jackson, she said, shaking his hand firmly. I've seen the video. This isn't just an assault. It's proof of a broken system. We can make them pay. Hank looked at her, not rushing to reply. He knew the cost of taking on the police. He'd paid it with Marcus's life, his son, decades ago. You sure you want to step into this? He asked. Lisa gave a faint smile. I was born for this. The three sat around Hank's small kitchen table, replaying the video on Maya's phone. Carter's slap, his growling voice, and Hank's steady gaze stood out clear as day. Lisa pointed at the screen. Carter's got a history of violence, she said, flipping a page in her files. I dug into his record. At least 5 complaints in the last 7 years. Assault, threats, abuse of power. None prosecuted. Someone shielding him. Hank frowned. Who? Lisa hesitated. Not sure yet, but there's a trail pointing to Chief James Nolan and a private security firm called Titan Solutions. They've been suspected of covering CPD scandals before. Hank went quiet. He remembered Marcus. His son's case disappeared, like that too. No evidence, no justice. So what do we do? He asked. Lisa met his gaze straight on. We need more proof. I'll reach out to an insider, Eddie Brooks, ex-cop, now a freelance investigator. He knows CPD's dirt. Maya nodded. I'll dig online. If Titan's involved, there'll be traces. But just as they started planning, outside pressure hit. The next morning, a patrol car cruised slowly past Hank's house, a deliberate warning. He stood on the porch, watching it pass, unflinching. By noon, a brick smashed through the living room window, a scrawled note attached, "Shut up or die." Maya ran out, face pale. Uncle Hank, they know what we're doing. Hank picked up the note, read it, then folded it into his pocket. They're scared, he said, voice cold. But I'm not stopping. Lisa called soon after, voice tight. I just talked to Eddie Brooks. He confirms Carter's part of an off-the-books CPD task force, targeting black neighborhoods. Nolan knows everything, but Titan Solutions is the fixer, wiping their tracks. Hank clenched his fist. So it's not just Carter, he said. It's a whole system. Lisa sighed. Yeah, but we've got the video. It's our weapon. That night, Bronzeville's community gathered at St. Mark's Church again. Reverend Paul Harris stood at the pulpit, voice blazing. We saw what happened to Hank. It's time we stand up. The crowd cheered, but Hank sat quietly, eyes sharp. He didn't want to be a symbol, but he knew he had no choice. Maya stood beside him, whispering. The videos spread beyond Chicago now, Uncle Hank. The press is asking questions. Police pressure didn't let up. Late that night, Hank's phone rang, an unknown number. He answered, voice low. Who's this? A cold male voice replied. Stop it, old man. You don't know who you're messing with. Hank didn't respond right away, then said, I know enough not to be scared. The line went silent, then hung up. Maya looked at him, worried. Who was that? Hank shook his head. Doesn't matter. They're shaking. The next morning, a small group gathered outside Hank's house, young folks from the neighborhood, holding phones and signs. We're with you, one shouted. Hank stepped out, looking at them, heart heavy but resolute. He didn't want to fight anymore, but Carter's slap had dragged him back, and now, he wouldn't back down. Lisa arrived with Eddie Brooks, a tall black man with tired eyes. I've got what you need, Eddie said, handing over a file. Carter's not alone. This is the list of who's behind him. Hank took the file, hands trembling slightly. He looked at Eddie, then Maya and Lisa. We start here, he said. Out there, Roy Carter and his protectors didn't yet know that slap didn't just hit Hank's face. It struck a volcano ready to erupt, and the police pressure was just the first spark. The air in Henry Hank Jackson's small Bronzeville home was heavier than ever. The living room window, smashed by a brick the night before, was now patched with duct tape, but the note reading, "Shut up or die," sat on the kitchen table like a grim reminder. Hank sat there, his deep brown eyes fixed on the file Eddie Brooks had delivered yesterday. Outside, the cold wind off Lake Michigan blew through, carrying sounds of a waking Bronzeville, but to Hank it was the sound of a battle he didn't want, but had to face. Maya Evans walked in, phone in hand, face tense. Uncle Hank, she said, voice quivering slightly. I just got a text from an unknown number. It says stop, or that kid Ethan's in trouble. Hank looked up, eyes darkening. Ethan was his nephew, Ruth's son, a 12-year-old who biked around the neighborhood after school. He clenched his fist, voice low but sharp. Show me. Maya handed him the phone. The message was short, cold, like a blade at the throat. Hank read it, set the phone down, silent for a long moment. They want me scared, he said, but they don't get that I already lost Marcus. I've got nothing left to lose. Lisa Grant arrived soon after, bringing a fresh stack of files. I just spoke with Eddie, she said, dropping the papers on the table. He found more on Titan Solutions. They're not just covering for Carter. They've got a city contract, approved by Assistant DA David Reese, and James Nolan's name's in here too. Hank frowned. Nolan, the chief. Lisa nodded. Yeah, Eddie says Nolan knows all about Carter's task force, but Titan's the cleanup crew, erasing evidence when needed. Maya jumped in, voice urgent. I looked online. Titan Solutions was suspected in a case last year. A journalist named Anna Lee investigated them, then suddenly vanished. They found her in her car, ruled an overdose, but she had no drug history. Hank looked at her, then Lisa. They killed her. Lisa sighed. We don't have proof yet, but Eddie's digging deeper. If it's true, this isn't just Carter. It's a network. The outside pressure didn't stop. At noon, a black SUV parked a few houses down from Hank's, windows dark, no one stepping out, but clearly watching. Hank stood on the porch, staring right at it, unflinching. Maya pulled him inside. Uncle Hank, they're threatening us. He shook his head. They can't scare me. They're just proving I'm right. That evening, Hank, Lisa, Maya, and Eddie met at St. Mark's Church for a public press conference. Reverend Paul Harris stood by, helping organize. Over 100 people showed up, holding signs and live streaming. Lisa took the podium, voice steady. "We have proof. Roy Carter isn't acting alone. He's protected by Chief James Nolan and Titan Solutions, a company willing to bury crimes to keep power." The crowd buzzed, some shouting, "Justice for Hank." Hank stood up after Lisa, voice low but resonating through the hall. "I didn't want to be here," he said, "but that slap wasn't just for me. It was for all of us. They think they can hit us, threaten us, and we'll stay quiet. They're wrong." Applause erupted. But then the church doors swung open. Roy Carter walked in, out of uniform, but his blue eyes still flashed arrogance. The crowd fell silent. Carter strode toward the podium, pointing at Hank. "Who do you think you are, slandering me?" he growled. "I do my job, and you're just an old troublemaker." Hank stepped forward, facing him, voice cold. "You hit me in front of everyone. You call that your job?" Carter smirked, closing in. "What do you want?" Round 2. He raised his hand like he'd strike, but the crowd surged, wedging between them. Reverend Harris yelled, "Enough!" Carter was forced back, but he shouted over them, "You'll regret this." He stormed out, leaving the hall seething. Maya caught it all, live streaming. The new video spread fast, piling pressure on CPD and Titan Solutions. Lisa whispered to Hank, "He just dug his own grave." But personal threats didn't stop. That night, an unmarked package arrived at Hank's door. Inside was a photo of Ethan biking home, with a scrawled note, "Stay quiet, or he's gone." Hank held the picture, hands shaking with rage. He called Ruth right away. "Get Ethan somewhere safe," he said. "I'll handle the rest." Ruth panicked. "Hank, what are you doing? They'll kill us." Hank replied, voice firm, "They won't touch anyone again." Hank summoned Lisa and Eddie immediately. Eddie eyed the photo, frowning. "This is Titan style, threatening family to silence people. But I've got news." Anna Lee found emails between Nolan and Reese, proving they knew Titan covered Carter's assaults. She died right after. Lisa cut in. "If we can prove it, Nolan and Reese are done." Hank nodded, "Then find it." The next morning, the Department of Justice, DOJ, contacted Lisa under public pressure. An agent named Laura Ortiz called. "We've seen the videos, and what Mr. Jackson's doing," she said. "We're tracking Titan Solutions. Stay safe, and send us everything you've got." Hank overheard, looking at Maya. "They're watching," he said. "But we've got to move faster." Across the street, Roy Carter sat in a car with a stranger from Titan Solutions. "That old man's going too far," he said. The other, voice cold, replied, "Handle it, but leave no trace." Bronzeville, Chicago, was no longer a quiet neighborhood. From Roy Carter's slap in St. Mark's Church, a fire of outrage had ignited, spreading through the red brick streets and beyond its borders. Henry Hank Jackson stood on his porch, watching a growing crowd rally outside CPD headquarters miles away. Signs held high, "Justice for Hank," and "End Police Violence," swayed in the cold wind off Lake Michigan. Maya's video had hit millions of views, and the community's roar couldn't be silenced. Hank didn't want to be the storm's center, but he knew it was out of his hands. Inside, Lisa Grant spread files across the kitchen table, voice tense but firm. "We've got enough to take this federal," she said. Eddie just sent more emails Anna Lee uncovered, between James Nolan and David Reese, proving they knew Titan Solutions covered Carter's violence. "I've filed a civil suit against CPD and Titan, demanding a federal probe." Hank nodded. "You sure?" Lisa met his eyes, steady. "Dead sure, but we need you to speak publicly again." Maya walked in, phone glowing with live stream alerts. "Uncle Hank, people are gathering at Washington Park," she said. "They want you to talk. National press is there too." Hank sighed, gazing out the window. He didn't want to be a symbol, but memories of Marcus and now threats to Ethan left him no choice. "All right," he said. "I'll go." Washington Park, a wide space with gnarled oaks, was packed. Hundreds, kids to elders, crowded together, phones up, live streaming. Reverend Paul Harris stood on a makeshift podium, Voice booming through speakers. We're here for Hank Jackson, for Jamal, for everyone the police treat like trash. Cheers drowned out the wind. Hank stepped up, slow but solid, the crowd hushing, as he took the mic. I didn't want to be here, he began, voice low but clear. I'm just an old man who wanted peace. But Roy Carter hit me, not because I did wrong, but because he thought he could. He thought no one would touch him, and he wasn't wrong. For years, we've let them do this to our kids. He paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. I lost my son Marcus to a cop who thought his life meant nothing. Now they're threatening my grandson, Ethan. I'm here not for me, but for all of us. The crowd erupted, chants of Hank, Hank ringing out. Maya filmed, tears streaking her face. But then a familiar figure pushed through the park's edge. Roy Carter, out of uniform, stormed forward, face red with rage. Old man, you're lying, he yelled, shoving through. I do my job, and you're just a troublemaker. People murmured, some raising phones to record. Hank turned, facing Carter, voice cold. You hit me in front of everyone. You call that your job? Carter closed in, jabbing a finger at Hank. What do you want? Round 2. I'll give it to you. He raised his hand, but this time, the crowd didn't stand still. A group of young guys rushed forward, wedging between them, forcing Carter back. Don't touch him, one shouted. Reverend Harris ran up, bellowing. Enough, get out. Carter was shoved back, but he yelled over them. You'll regret this. He turned and vanished into the crowd. But Maya's new video spread instantly. Carter threatening Hank again, pushed the heat on CPD and Titan Solutions to a boiling point. Lisa whispered to Hank, he just screwed himself again. We're winning. Meanwhile, at CPD headquarters, James Nolan sat in his office, face pale, as he watched the latest video. A man from Titan Solutions, in a black suit, stood nearby. Carter's losing it. The man said, deal with him or we're both done. Nolan nodded, but his hands shook. Public pressure was now beyond their grip. Hank returned home, but that night, Lisa's phone rang. Agent Laura Ortiz was on the line. We've got your suit, Ortiz said. The videos and Annalee's emails are solid. We're sending U.S. Marshals to Chicago to grab Carter. Mr. Jackson needs to stay safe. Titan won't sit still. Lisa looked at Hank, voice tight. DOJ's in, but you've got to be careful. Hank nodded, but he knew danger was closer than ever. He called Eddie Brooks right away. Eddie, I need you to protect Ethan and Ruth, he said. They're threatening my grandson. I won't let Marcus's story repeat. Eddie replied, voice firm. I'm on it, but you need protection too. Hank shook his head. I'm not afraid. They want me, let them come. The next morning, news broke. DOJ officially launched a probe into Titan Solutions and CPD. National outlets ran wild, headlines blaring. Chicago PD faces corruption charges after elderly man's assault. Carter was publicly suspended, but Titan vowed to back him. In a car, Carter took a call from Nolan. Shut up and disappear. Nolan growled. They're after me because of you. Carter sneered. I'm not going anywhere. They won't touch me. But Carter was wrong. Hank stood on his porch, watching that familiar black SUV cruise by again. The crowd at Washington Park had shaken CPD's foundation, and now, with DOJ in play, Carter, Nolan, and Titan's empire was cracking. Hank gripped his cane, eyes sharp. Come on, he whispered. I'm ready. The storm in Bronzeville, Chicago, had now become an unstoppable whirlwind. After Hank Jackson's speech at Washington Park, pressure from the community and media had backed the Chicago Police Department, CPD, and Titan Solutions into a corner. Hank sat in his small home, the faint yellow light from the porch lamp casting onto his face, where the red mark from Roy Carter's slap had faded, but the memory hadn't. He held the photo of Ethan that Titan had sent as a threat, his deep brown eyes glinting with resolve. He knew this fight wasn't over, but for the first time in decades, he felt justice drawing near. Lisa Grant called early that morning, her voice urgent but thrilled. "Hank, the U.S. Marshals just contacted me," she said over the phone. "They're working with DOJ and prepping to arrest Carter. Agent Laura Ortiz says they've got a warrant based on the video and Anna Lee's emails." Hank nodded, though Lisa couldn't see. "Have they found him yet?" he asked. "Not yet," Lisa replied. "He vanished after the park incident, but Eddie Brooks is tracking him. He thinks Carter's hiding in a garage near the loop." Hank set the phone down, gazing out at Bronzeville's quiet street. Eddie Brooks had gone to Ruth's last night, ensuring Ethan and his sister were safe. He knew Carter and Titan wouldn't give up easily, but that slap, and Carter's arrogance, had dug their own grave. He stood, gripping his cane, steeling himself for what was coming. Meanwhile, in a rundown garage in the loop, Roy Carter sat in a corner, clutching a beer bottle, his blue eyes full of unease. Beside him was a Titan Solutions man in a black suit, voice cold. "Nolan's cut you loose," the man said. "They're blaming you. Give me the cash and gun, then get out." Carter sneered, but his hand shook. "I'm not going anywhere. They won't touch me." The man shook his head. "Don't you see? That old man's ruined everything." But Carter didn't get to argue. Sirens wailed in the distance, then blinding headlights pierced the garage's grimy windows. U.S. Marshals, led by John Hayes, a tall man with razor-sharp eyes, burst in, guns raised. "Roy Carter, hands up." Hayes barked. Carter panicked, smashing the beer bottle on the floor, lunging for the back, but marshals had every exit blocked. In his pockets, they found cash and an unregistered gun, traces from Titan Solutions. Carter was cuffed, yelling, "You've got nothing. I'm protected." Hayes replied coolly, "Not anymore." News of the arrest spread like wildfire. Maya rushed into Hank's house, phone glowing with breaking updates. "Uncle Hank, they got Carter," she cheered, showing him the video from the scene. Hank watched Carter being hauled away, face pale, arrogance gone. "Good," he said, voice low, "but it's not done yet." Lisa arrived soon after, carrying DOJ papers. "Carter's the first step," she said. "Laura Ortiz just called. They're expanding the probe to Nolan and David Reese. Anna Lee's emails don't just tie to Carter, but to her death. They suspect Titan hired someone to kill her to shut her up." Hank frowned. "Got proof?" Lisa nodded. "They're looking, but with Carter caught, Nolan and Reese will panic. They might turn on each other." The Bronzeville crowd held a small vigil at Washington Park that night, not to celebrate, but to honor those like Marcus and Anna Lee, victims of the system Hank was dismantling. He stood among them, silent, laying a white flower on the ground. Maya stood beside him, whispering, "You did it, Uncle Hank." He shook his head. "Not me. All of us." At CPD headquarters, James Nolan sat alone, phone buzzing non-stop but unanswered. Carter's arrest had cost him sleep, and now, with DOJ targeting Titan, he knew escape was gone. David Reese called, voice frantic. "Nolan, they've got our emails. If Carter talks, we're done." Nolan growled, "Shut up, I'll handle it." But he knew there was no handling this anymore. Hank was called to DOJ's temporary Chicago office days later, the key witness in the case. Laura Ortiz, a petite but commanding woman, sat across from him. "Mr. Jackson," she said, "your niece's video and your testimony changed everything. Carter's facing assault, obstruction, and witness intimidation charges. But we need you to help nail Nolan and Reese." Hank nodded. "I'll do it." For Marcus. Back home, Hank sat on the porch, feeling lighter for the first time in days. He remembered the night Marcus died, the pain that once made him want to quit. But now, watching Ethan race out from Ruth's, biking and laughing, he knew he'd done right. Carter's arrest wasn't the end. It was the start of a deeper probe, a bigger fight. CPD was forced to cooperate with DOJ under federal oversight, and Titan Solutions began cracking from within. Sunlight filtered through the federal courthouse's high windows in Chicago, where Henry Hank Jackson sat on the witness stand, deep brown eyes staring straight ahead. The courtroom was hushed. only the steady breathing of spectators, and the clerk's pen scratching breaking the silence. Roy Carter sat at the defense table, hands cuffed, face pale, stripped of the arrogance from the day he slapped Hank in St. Mark's Church. Hank gripped his cane tight, not because he needed it, but because it was the only thing keeping him calm facing the man who'd reignited a fire he'd buried deep. The trial began after Carter's arrest in the Loop garage, where U.S. Marshals found cash and an unregistered gun, direct ties to Titan Solutions. The Department of Justice (DOJ), led by Agent Laura Ortiz, charged Carter with assault, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. But today wasn't just about Carter, it was about a system Hank, Lisa Grant, Maya Evans, and Eddie Brooks had exposed. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with a sharp voice, called Hank to the stand. "Mr. Jackson," he asked, "tell us what happened at St. Mark's Church." Hank took a deep breath, his low voice filling the room. "I was there to talk about Jamal, a kid nabbed for graffiti." Roy Carter walked in, demanding control. "I asked him how he treats people. He didn't answer. He slapped me, in front of everyone." He paused, eyes locking on Carter. He thought I was nothing. He thought no one would touch him. The courtroom buzzed, jurors scribbling notes. The prosecutor pressed. "Then what?" Hank tightened his grip. "He threatened my family, my grandson Ethan, sent pictures and messages, telling me to shut up, but I didn't." He looked up, voice firm. "I lost my son Marcus to a cop like him. I wasn't letting it happen again." Carter bowed his head, avoiding Hank's gaze, but his defense lawyer stood, voice slick. "Mr. Jackson, were you disruptive? Did you provoke my client?" Hank turned, eyes cutting. "I asked him a question. If that's provocation, he's too weak to be a cop." A ripple of laughter broke from the gallery, but Hank didn't smile. He just stared at Carter, letting him feel the weight of every word. The trial stretched 3 days, evidence piling up. Maya's video, Anna Lee's emails, between James Nolan and David Reese, and Eddie Brooks's testimony on CPD's off-the-books task force. Carter had no chance. The jury took 2 hours to decide guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern-faced woman, banged her gavel. "Roy Carter, you're sentenced to 15 years for assault, obstruction, and witness intimidation. This is a warning to anyone who thinks they're above the law." Carter was led away, head down, eyes empty, but the trial didn't end there. Laura Ortiz and DOJ seized the momentum to dig deeper. James Nolan resigned after the verdict, but couldn't dodge the probe. David Reese, under pressure, took a plea deal for leniency, admitting Nolan ordered Titan Solutions to erase evidence in dozens of cases, including Anna Lee's death, confirmed as a staged overdose assassination. Titan Solutions faced a federal investigation, top execs arrested, and its Chicago contract canceled. Hank stepped out of the courthouse, sunlight hitting his face. Maya ran up, hugging him tight. "You did it, Uncle Hank," she said, tears streaming. Lisa and Eddie stood by, smiling. "This isn't just our win," Lisa said. "CPD's under federal oversight. They're forced to reform policies, training, everything." Hank nodded, but said nothing. He looked into the distance, thinking of Marcus. That night, he returned to Bronzeville, sitting on the porch with Maya. The street felt calmer, but Hank knew the scars lingered. "Think things'll really change?" Maya asked. Hank looked at her, voice low. "Not all of it, but we opened a door. Now it's up to folks like you. Keep it open." Maya nodded, eyes bright with resolve. News swept Chicago. Cop convicted. CPD reforms, under DOJ pressure. Old cases, including Marcus's, were reopened. Hank didn't chase fame. He declined every interview, just sat quietly on the porch, watching Ethan bike home from Ruth's. He thought of Carter's slap, what Gann thought was a show of power, but now it was the first brick toppling his empire. At the same time, not far off, but like a different world, Hank Jackson sat still in his old armchair on the porch, bathed in the afternoon's faint sunlight. Unlike Carter, he wasn't confined, but he didn't need freedom like a trophy either. He'd reclaimed it with his own resolve. Hank's deep brown eyes followed Ethan, his grandson, biking back from Ruth's, each wheel turn chiming through the calm street. The boys' clear laughter rang out in the cold Lake Michigan breeze, proof the struggle hadn't been for nothing. That's why he endured, why he never bowed. The cane rested silently beside him, no longer a crutch for physical wounds, but a witness to healed spiritual scars, a symbol, a companion. And in that simple moment, Hank knew real justice wasn't in verdicts, but in a black child, laughing on the street without fear. Maya Evans sat beside him, her phone quiet after the media storm. "Uncle Hank," she said softly, "things are changing. CPD's got federal oversight. Old cases are being reviewed. You did it." Hank looked at her, a faint smile flickering. "I didn't do it, Maya," he replied. "We did. I was just the one slapped. You, Lisa, Eddie, and everyone here made it roar." He gazed down the street, where Bronzeville's scars lingered. Old houses, corners that had seen injustice. Roy Carter was behind bars. James Nolan and David Reese faced probes. Titan Solutions crumbled. But Hank knew the fight wasn't over. Justice didn't come like magic. It was a flame to keep burning. "I didn't change the world," he told Maya, voice low. "I just made it see clearer. Now it's your job. Keep that door open." Maya nodded, eyes alight with hope. Hank stood, heading inside, leaving the porch still. Distant sirens sounded, but this time, they carried no threat. Chicago had battles ahead, but Hank had sparked a light, not for himself, but for Ethan, for Marcus, for those who dared stand. Justice didn't come from one, it came from those who wouldn't stay silent, even if they were just ordinary folks. The story: racist cops slapped the wrong black old man. 4 minutes later, their empire begins to crumble. Vertical bar Chicago Stories mirrors a reality still alive in the U.S. today: racial tension, police abuse and community power against injustice. Bronzeville's setting recalls black neighborhoods, like the South Side, where histories of racism and police violence linger, from Laquan McDonald to protests after George Floyd's death. Hank Jackson, a 68-year-old who lost his son Marcus to police, represents black elders carrying painful memories, yet still fighting. Roy Carter, with his arrogance and backing from James Nolan and Titan Solutions, reflects officers shielded by a system. A flaw Black Lives Matter keeps calling out. Maya's viral video echoes how clips of police brutality today, like Tyre Nichols's, spark outrage and policy shifts. The lesson here isn't just stand up to injustice, but how personal pain can fuel collective action. Hank didn't fight alone. Maya filmed. Lisa sued. Eddie dug up proof, and Bronzeville protested. It shows in today's America, justice doesn't come free. It takes unity, tech, law, and public voice. Look at how DOJ stepped in under public pressure in the story. It's a reminder you don't need to be a lone hero, but can start small, like filming or marching. Don't wait for the system to fix itself. Learn from Hank: patience, persistence, and know every step, like the slap that shook Carter's empire, can change the game. Don't forget to subscribe, to follow justice fights like Hank Jackson's. Thanks for helping us amplify Bronzeville's voice, and see you in the next video to explore more system-changing stories.